Toronto Climate Week, and Plant-Based Treaty is really proud to be part of it. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to begin by mentioning that Dr. Jane Goodall passed away, and so our heartfelt thanks to everything she's done for the world, and it's we just want maybe to take a moment of silence and just reflect on her life and what she's contributed. So maybe let's take a few seconds and just contemplate that. Okay, well, today I'm going to be talking about eating our way to a greener world. And I have a question for you. Can a plant-based food system solve some of the big challenges we have, such as the climate crisis? My name is Anita Krajnc. I'm the campaign coordinator for the Plant-Based Treaty. The treaty was launched in 2021 after we met with Sephora Berman, a fellow Canadian, who's the chair of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we asked her, how do we put food on the global agenda? And when she showed us the Fossil Fuel Treaty, we copied it, and within 4 months, we launched it in 2021. Food systems account for a third of global greenhouse gas emissions, a full third. Adrian, if you could switch the slide. So this slide shows the likely temperature rises, even under the most optimistic scenarios of the policies and actions governments have taken to date. So the temperature is projected to increase by more than 2 degrees Celsius, which is, exceeds the Paris Accords. The Paris Accords set a target of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius warming as the upper limit. And the IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, said that increasing above 2 degrees Celsius would be catastrophic. So that's where we're heading. So the question is, what role should food systems play in meeting the Paris Agreement? Maybe we don't have to go into that catastrophic scenario if we eat our way to a greener world. So next slide, please. So I wanted you to look at this first graph, and that shows per capita meat consumption. So in 1980, it was roughly 30 kilograms per person per year. And that has only gone up and up and up, except with COVID, small dip, back up. And it is now 45 kilograms per person per year. That's a 50% increase in 40 years. This other graph shows the projected increase in the consumption of different animals. And it shows, I guess if you can move the, it's cut off there. Can we move the projector so that it's not cut off?
Yeah, we're just worried because you're...
Okay, that's better. That's much better. Thank you.
Perfect.
This is much better. It's a little more focused, yeah. Okay, so this is the 1960s. This is measured, unfortunately, in volume of animals. It's very disrespectful, but that's how it's measured. And it's for different types of animals. And it just shows a steady increase. And according to Harvard, the consumption would have to peak in 2030 to avoid 2 degrees Celsius warming or catastrophic warming. So Harvard, sorry, somebody's in this slide. So Harvard studies showed that by 2030 we have to peak and then go down. But the projections right now is that meat consumption is still going to go up and up. According to the Harvard study, by 2036, global emissions from farmed animals must drop 61% to align with the goals of the Paris Agreement. So 6 years later, we have to go that fast down if we're going to meet the Paris Accords. Next slide, please. So this slide shows per capita consumption of meat by different countries. So at the top, you can see Hong Kong, the United States. The United States' consumption is about 124 kilograms per year. Most of the countries here are in the West, except Argentina and Brazil are in the top 6 meat-consuming countries. Canada is number 14 at 83 kilograms. There. Canada's over here. So we're really high consumers of meat. Next slide, please. So this is the outline for today. So I'll first talk about food security and the threats to food security, and then talk about plant-based treating and how we can beat it. And I put the donut economics framework there. How many people have heard of Donut Economics by Kate Raworth? So Fernando, Adrian, Peter, so a few people have. So Kate Raworth is a British economist at Oxford, and she introduced the concept of donut economics. And what she does is challenges the idea of infinite growth. So rather, you need to think of a circular economy rather than endless growth on a limited planet. And the outer ring represents 9 planetary boundaries. So a planetary boundary is defined by, we have to protect that environmental issue in order for life to survive in the long term. And so it includes like climate change, biodiversity, water use, ocean acidification, land use and so forth, nitrogen and phosphorus and so forth. And the inner ring is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But in our case, the climate treaty, what we did was we put some food issues at the center. So normally you look at things like food, water, health, education, gender equity, political voice. In our case, we looked at greening cities, food security, indigenous protection, and so forth. Next slide, please. So the food system is broken, and it's becoming less and less resilient. And these are sort of some of the indicators of that. So one indicator is UN Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is zero hunger by 2030. So the UN Sustainable Development Goals were set up in 2015, and so 10 years later, hunger has gone up from 7.7% of the world's population suffering from hunger, up to 8.2%. So we're going in the wrong direction. The other things to consider, why our food system is becoming less food secure, less resilient, are these other issues. So the number, again, is measured in volume, very disrespectful to animals, but the volume of farmed animals is up 15% between 2015 and 2024. Our circuit breakers our food system is relying on breaking circuit breakers, so it's becoming less diverse. So there's more and more oligopolies controlling, the seeds, the pesticides, the farm equipment, and so forth. Animal feed, like there's fewer and fewer companies that are controlling that. And so that means the system is less, it's more simple, it's more vulnerable to break down. And then some parts of the world become too hot for outdoor work. So as the world temperature goes up and up, it will be hard to even do farm work. Oh, my dog's super sorry. What was that? Okay, sorry. All right. I was wondering, what is that? Okay, yeah, that's Michelle and Daisy. Okay. So, also there's a reduced quality of grains. So the grains are going to have, because as the world gets warmer, the crops grow faster and they have less time to absorb minerals and vitamins like iron. So there's a lot of deficiencies that people are already suffering from, and that's only going to get worse. Then there's a greater number of extreme weather events like flooding and drought and hurricanes and so forth. And then water availability is going to go down. Right now, it's going up in some places because the glaciers are melting, so it all looks very good. But once those glaciers melt, there's going to be a deep decline. And then there's also land use and deforestation, biodiversity crises, and soil crises that we'll talk about a bit more. Okay, so next slide, please. So the Food and Agriculture Organization, I wouldn't move it too much because we need that slide. Something happened. Can we move it back? Okay. So yeah, the Food and Agriculture Organization produces an annual report, and so they define food security as having sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So that's the definition of food security: sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. And once again, I just wanted to show the latest planetary boundaries diagram by Johann Rockström. Again, those are the 9 environmental boundaries, and right now 7 of the 9 have been breached. And the ones that are particularly bad are, as you can see in the red zone, is climate, biodiversity. I think this is phosphorus and nitrogen flows. So, how many people have heard of Johann Rockström and planetary boundaries? That's really good to hear. So there's a film that you can watch on Netflix called Breaking Boundaries, and there's a book by the same title. Strongly recommended. The film is narrated by someone help me with that.
David Attenborough?
Sorry?
Yes, yes.
Sir David Attenborough.
Yeah, Sir David Attenborough narrates the film. So I strongly recommend you watch Breaking Boundaries and get the book. It's an excellent book. Okay, so next slide, please. So this diagram shows tipping points for climate change. So this is 1.5 to 2 degrees warming. So we're already at 1.1, and you can see the most likely tipping point is the dot. So what this shows is the first 5 listed may be passed before we even reach the Paris Accords, before we even reach 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. We are already in the danger zone for Greenland Iceland collapse, West Antarctic ice sheet collapse, tropical coral reef die-offs. As you know, the die-offs are happening now, even at this temperature. Northern permafrost abrupt thaw, Labrador sea current collapse. So already we're in the danger zone of these tipping points. When we get to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, then we're in danger of Barents Sea ice loss, mountain glacier loss, Atlantic current collapse, northern forest dieback, and so forth. And then the other tipping points at more degrees warming, this is 4 degrees warming, 6 degrees, 8 degrees warming. Other tipping points are for West African monsoon, East Antarctic glacier collapse, Amazon rainforest dieback, northern permafrost collapse, Arctic winter sea ice collapse, and so forth. So it's really important not to have warming, or any warming, but even like if you go beyond 2 degrees Celsius, it is absolutely catastrophic. Slide 9, please. So if you've flown in a plane, when you look out, you often see this scene. And it's like, it's not forest, it's just field after field. Next slide, please. So where has all the nature gone? Why are there so many farm fields? So if you look at land use that's taken up by urban areas, it's only about 2% of the land. So you know how we worry about urban sprawl as we should, but it's only 2%. By far, what's much more concerning is agricultural sprawl. Next slide, please. So when you add crops, mixed crops, other crops, that's the yellow. As you can see, look at Canada, US, much of our land is taken up by crops. Next slide, please. And then there's pasture and rangeland, and by then you get to 56%. So humans use most of the land surface for making food for ourselves. But then the question is, how much is this food that we eat directly, and how much is it fed to farmed animals? So that's the big question. So human species, we're only one species, but we use 56% of the land for urban, and then mostly for creating food. Okay, so next slide, please. This is the shocking slide, and it's very revealing. The big takeaway is by product. If you look at beef and lamb, it's taking up all of North America, Central America, and parts of Northern South America. If you look at dairy, or look at all the land it requires. If you look at rangelands, and then other food, food that we directly, like fruits and vegetables, takes a small portion. So most of the land is used for animal farming. Okay, next slide, please. And one of the things you need to worry about on top of it is that it's not stopping. Like every year we deforest about 9 million hectares for commodity crops, and 71% of that land that's cleared is for animal agriculture. So we continue to eat more and more land. So this graph is based on poor and Nemesic. So poor is an Oxford Oxford researcher, and he and Nemesic produced a study where they looked at 40,000 farms in 119 countries and covering 40 products that represent 90% of all the food that's eaten. So it's a very comprehensive study. It's the biggest analyses to date. And the biggest takeaway is that animal farming is using 83% of the land. Oh, so can you move the slide over, please?
That was in the left.
Oh, sorry, can you move it over? Just because I need the whole, can you move it? Okay, so yeah, can you just keep it this way because I need the whole slides. Okay, so yeah, can you move this way, Ron? This way, yeah, thanks. Okay, so as you can see, it's 83% of land use, and it produces only 18% of the calories. So it's, and or 37% of the protein. But when you look at other issues, it also leads to 71% of deforestation, 58% of greenhouse gas emissions from food, 56% of terrestrial acidification, and then eutrophication, that is nitrogen and phosphorus use, which leads to the loss of aquatic life, and 33% of freshwater withdrawals. So the point is that in most of these environmental issues, a very large share, and in most cases a big majority of the share of environmental impacts comes from eating animals and animal products. So it's not just about the climate. You can't have a carbon vision. It's not just about the climate. You have to think of freshwater use, eutrophication, all these other planetary boundaries. And that's the new framework that needs to be used. And, when you go to the climate conferences, often the focus is just on CO2. That's not enough. You have to look at all the planetary boundaries. Next slide, please. Okay, so this looks at the carbon footprint of different types of food. So at the top, you can see for 100 grams of beef produced from beef herds, in some cases it's like high impact. Like in some countries it will be like very high impact, like at 100, there you see it at 105 kilograms of CO2 produced just for 100 grams of beef, versus in some areas it will have a lower impact of 20. But as you can see, it's still very high compared to nuts, peas, pulses, ground nuts, tofu. So what you notice in this chart is that if you look at the plant-based products, they're all at the bottom. So plant-based products are at the bottom in terms of impact on CO2 emissions. And then if you look at in contrast, if you look at the top of the chart, that's where you have all the animal products. So next slide, please. So this is, again, climate change, but what if you look at other issues, the other planetary boundaries, like land use, eutrophication, acidification? Similar story. So the trend exists for other environmental issues. Plant-based products are at the bottom in terms of impact on acidification, eutrophication, and land use. Nuts and pulses can use a lot of land, but they still use a lot less than for ruminant animals. So if everyone went vegan on the planet, you could lower eutrophication by 40%, you could reduce land use by 75%. And what this chart shows is that diet change is essential for reforestation and rewilding, if you look at land use. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide is for milk. So if you look at dairy milk, cow's milk, and you look at greenhouse gas emissions, acidification, eutrophication, land use, and water use, you see the highest impact on the environment. In terms of plant-based milks, overall, soy milk and oat milk have the least impact. Producing dairy milk involves 10 times as much land as producing oat milk. So if you go to the land use here, so dairy milk versus oat milk, it uses 10 times as much land. So we're not even talking, 25% more land or 50% more land. We're talking 10 times more. That's 1,000%. Okay, so there's no comparison when you look at eating plant-based versus eating animal products. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the amount of land that's available per person if humans divided all the land up just for humans. It's 17,000 meters. But look how much we use based on our current diet. So the average person is using 6,200. But if you're not eating animal products, you're only using a quarter of that land. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide shows how many trees or how much of land was covered by forest 10,000 years ago, before animal agriculture really took off. So at that point, 57% of the land was covered by forests. Today, it's only 38%. Okay? And it's shrinking because more and more forests are being converted for soy production for animal feed as animal consumption is going up around the world. So next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows how many hectares we use for farming. So overall, it's 4 billion hectares of the Earth's surface is used for farming. And most of it is for pasture. And then a lot of it is for animal feed, and then just this much is like directly for human feed, human consumption. If everyone went vegan, we would only use 1 billion hectares, as opposed to 4 billion hectares. So there's nothing more powerful to reduce your environmental impact than to go plant-based. I think that's the conclusion. Okay, next slide, please. So this particular slide shows if people did go plant-based and use less land, so all of that land would be saved, would be green, you would, each person could save 5 birds, 15 mammals, 20 reptiles, 100 amphibians, and also you could store a lot of carbon. In a lot of, it would result in carbon sequestration of 150 tons of CO2. Next one, please. Okay, so I have a question for you here. What are the different actions people can take? Like, what, in your mind, what are the actions people can take to reduce their impact?
Go vegan.
They can go vegan. What else? What else can you do?
Make sure a day doesn't pass that we try to convert at least one person to be vegan.
Okay. All right. Besides, diet. What are the other things you can do? Yes.
Like you mean in terms of like saving greenhouse gas?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say like not driving, using public transport, or recycling, stuff like that.
That's good. Yeah. So those are some of the things that are mentioned. Like car-free is big. So that's the next thing that's mentioned is car-free. Avoiding transatlantic flights. Recycling is over there. Hanging your clothes to dry, things like that. So there's a lot of things you can do, and basically we should do all of these things. Joseph Poor says the vegan diet is probably the single biggest way to reduce your impact on planet Earth, not just greenhouse gases, but global acidification, eutrophication, land use, and water use. But we should be doing all these things, like electric cars versus conventional cars. Next slide, please. So this is one of my favorite charts from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, from the special report on climate change and land use. And they looked at different diets. And sometimes in this movement we don't want to use the word vegan, we just say plant forward or plant rich. But the IPCC had to operationalize the term. Because if you say plant forward, it might just be more green leaves on your plate, right? What does that mean? How do you operationalize it? So they did use the word vegan, and it's defined as no animal-sourced food. So the report used that term, and they found that this was, if the world went vegan, that would save 8 gigatons of carbon equivalent a year, 8 gigatons. And that number would double with land use changes. If you reforested and rewilded, it would be more than double. And these are some of the other diets, like vegetarian would result in 6 gigatons carbon equivalent, flexitarian, limited meat and dairy. And so they looked at the Mediterranean diet, 3 gigatons. So what this shows is the optimal diet to fight climate change is vegan. Next slide, please. So this is, again, the Food and Agriculture Organization. So we talked a lot about environmental impacts. What about the human costs of our current food system? So this was a special study by the Food and Agriculture Organization where they focused on revealing the true costs of food. So how many people have heard of true cost accounting, TCA, true cost accounting? So they did this report in 2023, and they found that the costs are in trillions of dollars in terms of environmental, social, and health impacts. And because the wealthy nations spend more on these issues like health, that's why they show up as the greatest number of trillions of dollars. Next slide, please. But if you look at per capita, then the story changes. The hidden costs are much higher for low-income countries. It's 27% of their income is lost because of the inefficiency of our food system. So the poor, they suffer in terms of the environment, poverty in rural areas, and health costs. So the food system is very unfair. We don't have a safe and just food system because it generates a huge amount of poverty, environmental degradation, and illness. And that's why you can see that our sustainable development goals are failing. Next slide, please. So now, turning to the plant-based treaty and some of the solutions. So the plant-based treaty is structured like a pyramid, and a lot of social movements have the same structure. So if you look at the civil rights movement, they would have like a grand strategic objective, they would have different phases, lots of different campaigns, and hundreds of nonviolent tactics. So just in the case of the civil rights movement, what was the goal? Again, very generally, what was the goal of the civil rights movement?
Equal rights for
Exactly.
African Americans.
That's all, it was equal rights. So then they would have different phases. What were some of the phases of the civil rights movement? Anyone?
Amount of public awareness, was that one?
Yeah, but more specifically, like, what were they fighting for? Anyone?
Oh, legislative change?
Yeah, that was equal voting rights was one.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Opportunity, maybe, equal opportunity.
Yeah, there was like anti-poverty, anti-militarization. Then the first one was desegregation. So it started like desegregation, equal voting rights, anti-poverty, anti-militarization. So they had those phases. Then under that, they had dozens of campaigns, like the Freedom Rides, the Freedom Summer, to get voting, the marches, the sit-ins. And then you have like a lot of nonviolent tactics. So in our case, we have the same structure, and it was by accident because we copied the fossil fuel treaty. And we didn't even know we had the structure until somebody pointed it out. We go, oh, you have the pyramid. Oh, okay, good. We didn't know, because obviously they put a lot of thought into the structure. So our grand strategic objectives is to develop a safe and just plant-based food system so that we can live within our planetary boundaries and rewild the earth. It's a very big idea, it's a big goal. Like, we want to live, within our planetary boundaries and create a safe and just food system. And then under it, we have 3 R's. Again, that's copying the fossil fuel treaty. So the first one is redirect. So we want to redirect policies, economic and political tools to promote plant-based. So that could be regulations, taxes, subsidies, public information campaigns. Relinquish, it means don't make the problem worse. Fossil fuel treaty has that idea. Like in the case of the fossil fuel treaty, they were saying no new production or no more exploration for fossil fuels, no more development. So in our case, it's like no new deforestation for expanded animal agriculture, that kind of thing. And then restore is like rewild, just transition, food security, things like that, land equity. And then the campaigns, you could have, hundreds of campaigns for that. So we have public information campaigns, you can have subsidy campaigns, menu change, food security, honest labeling on, carbon labeling on food. In the case of Relinquish, like we were trying to stop octopus farms. So there are some companies that want to create like factory farms for octopuses. So like there's a Spanish company that's trying to do that. It's happening in Mexico. There was an attempt in Hawaii, but that was shut down. Ban live exports, stop animal gifting. How many of you have seen like Oxfam or World Vision, try to encourage people to do goat passing or during the holidays? Well, that's very destructive because they're expanding animal ag. So we have a campaign against that to try to inform them that they should not. They should rather be promoting plant-based food systems. And then finally, there you can see for restoration, food justice, land equity, community gardening, greening cities, and so forth. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are our programs. This is a lot of info on the slide, but just to give you an idea, we have 5 programs. We collect endorsements. So today we're hoping that you'll endorse as an individual. We already have 250,000 people that have endorsed the treaty. So please, if you haven't already, if you could circulate that, Samita. We're asking people to endorse the treaty. I don't know if there's a pen or. Yeah. Okay, cool. There we go. Pass it back, sorry. Yeah. So we have 250,000 people, including a beetle. Sir Paul McCartney endorsed the treaty. We have a few Nobel laureates. The fossil fuel treaty has 100 Nobel laureates. We have about 6. And then we have 4,000 groups and businesses, and we have a city campaign. We have 50 city endorsements. The fossil fuel treaty has 50 cities, and they have 18 countries. We don't have a country yet, but we're close. So we think at COP30 we'll have our first country or 2 endorsing the treaty. And we're going to ask them to do a national plant-based action plan, just like Denmark has done. And then we have a menu change campaign. So again, Adrian, who's our marketing person, she did some beautiful window claims that we put on businesses that say we serve plant-based milk, or we have plant-based options, or we are fully plant-based. And then we try to change other institutions. So we have playbooks of best practices for seniors' homes, for universities, for schools, and so forth. So we have playbooks of best practices. If a university went fully plant-based, that would be the best practice. But the second best practice is plant-based by default. Has anybody heard of that concept or can define it? What is plant-based by default? That's the second best part.
So like the New York public hospitals, their menus are vegan and the patients have to request animal products?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So normally say you're going on a train or you're flying, they'll say beef or chicken, a beef sandwich or a chicken sandwich. So what if you flip that and do you want zucchini lasagna or whatever, some plant-based dish? So in New York hospitals, they do it twice by default. And the uptake is 50%. So that's the second best thing you can do. Rather than going fully plant-based, you get immediate results by doing plant-based by default.
What do you mean twice by default?
The first dish they offer is plant-based, but you say no, then the second dish is plant-based. If you say no, then you get. Yeah. So you do it twice.
Huh.
So, and then we have global climate talk, so we have UN observer status. So we've been at the COPs, they're called Conference of the Parties. So COP30 is coming up, that means 30 years of it. They started 30 years ago. We have UN observer status, so we have the number of people that are going to Brazil. And Anita, are you going? Yeah, so Anita goes to a lot of these amazing events, and so she's going, so that's awesome. Training and capacity building, so we have 200 teams. So we have, every Friday we have welcoming calls, and then we set up teams. So we have 200 teams in about 40 countries. Great, next slide please. So these are the 50 cities that have endorsed. And there's, the ones I highlighted on the right are 3 Canadian, Ontario cities. So Caledon endorsed, Brampton, and Mississauga just a week or 2 ago. So yeah, we're very excited. So the 3 of them are in the region of Peel. So now we're going to target the region of Peel because they have jurisdiction over hospitals. So now that we have those 3, we can then go to the region of Peel. So if any of you, so you're representing an MP. So you said 2 of you are representing an MPP.
Oh yeah, MPV.
Yeah. So we have some MPPs and MPs that have signed the treaty. So maybe if you want to just say again the name of your.
Mary Margaret McMahon, but it's the same writing as Nathaniel Larson Smith. He's the MP there, so maybe he is fine.
He hasn't signed it yet.
Oh, he
so maybe can you please beat him to it?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Triple M threat.
All right. Next slide, please. So this is one of my favorite books. I can't recommend this book enough. Regenesis by George Monbiot. How many people have heard of George Monbiot? So a few of you have. He's a British writer. He writes for The Guardian. And this book is so well written. If you get the audiobook, he narrates it. It's very engaging. So I can't recommend this book enough, so please get it. So the plant-based treaty has 40 detailed proposals, the 3 R's, and then under each R, we have like a number of proposals. And so proposal 3 has to do with food security. It should be a priority for all nations with focus on ending poverty and hunger. Proposal 5 also has to deal with, it also deals with that. So, yeah. So that the proposal 5 says shift away from monoculture, arable farming that depletes soil, decreases biodiversity, and is reliant on external inputs such as animal manure and agrochemicals towards agroecology, organic farming, using regenerative permaculture and natural principles to restore soil and ecosystem, enhance food security, and provide nutrient-dense food. How many people are familiar with permaculture or agroforestry? I know a few of you mentioned that you're like looking into that. Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, so next slide, please. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about one of the examples in the book Genesis, and then there are a lot of videos that you can get on YouTube, getting a tour of Ian Tolhurst's farm. So I wanted you just to observe the pictures a little here, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. What you see. So here you see the background. So he has 19 acres, and in this picture you can see some of the fields are divided by flower banks and a high hedge all around circumference. And so each of those fields is 1 hectare, and he has 7 hectares like that. He also has polytunnels and a garden. Okay, so I just want you to look at this, and look at this one. It looks like a lot of different like wild flowers. Okay, so the question for you is, this is a organic farm, so it's organic and it uses no inputs from like animal manure or artificial fertilizer. So the question is, how does Tolly or Ian Tolhurst avoid pesticides? Just from looking particularly at this picture, how do you think he avoids using pesticides?
Would you plant like crops that are resilient to sort of these, so you could plant mint, for example, or crops that are actually resilient to pests, and that will prevent the crops from getting it? Is it that?
That's not his focus, but yeah, that is certainly a method that some farmers use. Anybody else? Any other guesses? From just like why would you have? So that's 3 meters of flower banks, 25-meter field across, 3 meters of flower banks. So the flower banks involve like 70 diverse. I know Peter knows the answer, so let's see if somebody else knows. So anybody else? Okay, yeah, Nika?
I was gonna say pollinators like bees and butterflies and stuff coming into the flower banks somehow helps with that.
Yeah, you're getting on the right track. You're getting more and
Is it
more.
the same biodiversity that the environment uses to not need pesticides to flourish?
That sort of takes it, yeah. So he has incredible insect biodiversity. That's why he has 3 meters of the flower banks. There's so much biodiversity that there are predator insects that eat the other, like the aphids and the other, so that's he mimics nature, right? So, okay, so that's the answer to that. So, how does he avoid using fertilizer? So he doesn't use artificial fertilizer or manure. How do you think he does that?
Well,
Or they do.
replicating nature. Nature just uses biomass to nourish the soil, so he's just replicating nature.
That's true. Any more specifically?
Maybe he's also like planting different types of like vegetable legumes like every other season or something like that.
Yeah. So he has complex rotation. So he has like 7 fields. So basically, if you look at the next slide, come on in. There's lots of seats. So that's his 7-year complex rotation. So the first 2 years he has green manure. But you're right. So he says the way to avoid using fertilizer is you have to. The system has to be watertight because most of your nutrients are lost from the water cycle, not from soil erosion. It's actually the water just like sweeps away nutrients. So he creates a system that's watertight. So he has a couple of years where he has green manure and he grows like white, red clover, chicory. Chicory has roots of 1.5 meters. So it's the root system that creates a very, watertight system. And then those roots then draw nutrients from the subsoil. So the green manure both builds soil fertility and also maintains soil fertility. So the first year, as you can see in that slide, he grows green manure, so different types of green manure. And then second year green manure, third year is potatoes. Fourth year is kale, broccoli, and he says that they require a lot of fertility, soil fertility. And then onions and leeks, and he says the root vegetables involve less, they need less soil fertility, so he grows carrots, parsnips, year 7 is squash, and then he also grows some green manure, or when the squash gets big enough, he already plants the green manure, and then the leaves shade the green manure so that it's not dominant. Next slide, please. Okay, so proposal 17 of our treaty says, focuses on supporting farmers in a plant-based transition. And so when you think of food, think of fruits and vegetables. So we talked about Ian Tolhurst, and so he grows fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables. But then there's also you need arable land to grow grains. 50% of the calories that humans consume comes from grains, 50%. So one of the issues with growing grains is that there's a lot of tilling and plowing, and it leads to soil erosion. So one of the things we have to look into is like, how do we minimize tilling or even have no till? And one of the exciting solutions is perennial crops. So there's one called Kernza. There's the Land Institute in Kansas that's been working on perennial crops for grains and rice. So look up the Land Institute, or the Land Trust, The Land Trust, they're doing great work in Kansas. So China has grown some of that perennial rice. It's called PR26 or something. And then this Kernza their grains only have 50% of the weight of regular grains, so they're still working. It's going to take time to fully develop it. But once that happens, then you don't have to plow for like many years. That's really good. In terms of fat and protein, plant-based legumes, they are nitrogen fixing, and according to a study, this study referred to in The Guardian, we need to increase consumption by 5 times. So just think about that practically. What does that mean? How do we, as a society, how do we really increase the consumption of legumes as a source of protein? We really need to think. So Plant-Based Treaty has developed a lentil cookbook. I know, Varun, you have one of your recipes for, is it dal?
Yeah.
Your dal recipes in it. We're doing another cookbook on beans, and we're going to ask celebrities to give us their favorite recipes, just because we want a greater reach. Like, we want people to see this cookbook. So that's something we're currently working on. So if any of you have any suggestions on celebrities we could approach from around the world, we're going to try it. We're working on a bean cookbook. Precision fermentation is something that also would vastly reduce land use. So George Monbiot is very excited about that potential. Next slide, please. And I just like this slide because it shows what would happen to Miami with sea level rise, with warming, and then it says the UN urges global move to meat and dairy-free diet. So this is the reality. Like, if we don't change our food system, this is what we're going to get, like, all over the world. So I just wanted to remind people, like, this is to think about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're now looking at public information campaigns. So this is a number of us are. Jacinta's here, somewhere here, I think. So we're going to Muskoka for a few days because we're giving a presentation on Friday, and this is in Gravenhurst. One of the counselors, Councillor Peter Johnson, put up our leaflets. So we have some leaflets that they're on the table there that you can take later. So we can put these in libraries. So I think libraries are a great place to raise awareness. I think all of us should think about that. Like, we also did a seed workshop at a library, like showing them, we gave out kale seeds. So public education is really important because when you think of cities and what cities can do, often they just talk about procurement. Like, the city of Toronto has power over procurement for seniors' homes, early childhood education, and shelters. That's it. And it's only like a few million meals, like it might be 9 million meals a year. How many meals are eaten in Toronto every year? How many do you think? What did you say?
A billion?
Billions. So like, if the city of Toronto like tries to change its procurement for 9 million, it's a drop in the bucket. We really need to think of the city as a whole. So we need to work on public education. So this is something for, important for politicians to think about. It's not just procurement because it's about, small amount. So New York City, which is a leader it's probably the world's leader, one of the world's leaders in plant-based, they did an ad campaign called Eat a Whole Lot More Plants because they wanted people to eat whole foods. So as you can see, it's whole foods here, like broccoli, they have all these vegetables, because they want people to eat healthy. And this was done by the health, it's hard to read here, but it was the health department, New York City Health Department and the mayor's office. And they ran that for a month. That's an ad in Manchester, eat less meat and dairy. So like, having public education campaigns is really important. Next slide, please. So, Len mentioned that New York hospitals are using greener by default or plant-based by default. And this is the result. So they did it in all 11 public hospitals, and it had an acceptance rate. And people weren't complaining. Because when you do greener by default, you give people a choice. Nobody can say like, oh, you're taking away my freedom or anything, because you're not taking away choice. So it's very few people like complain about it. 90% satisfaction, 50% uptake. So what percentage of people in the United States are plant-based, fully plant-based?
1%.
You said that?
1.
Okay, 1%. Yeah, it's around that. It's 1-2%. It's very low. And it hasn't really gone up like it's terrible. It's really low. But suddenly, it's 50%. So
What does that mean? What do you mean by uptake in that
So
hospital
50%
context?
of the people ate plant-based. That was the uptake.
Oh, I see.
So it would have been 2% if it was just like, choose your meal. But if you do greener by default, that's so nice to see you. But, so can you see the power of that tool? And you're not taking anybody's choice away, and you're helping the environment. And you're helping them. They're in the hospital and they're eating healthy. Imagine that. So like 36% carbon savings, trade cost savings, that many plant-based, plant-forward meals were served in 2023. So I just wanted to share that tool with you. You can make a university go fully plant-based, 100 plant-based. That's the best thing you can do. But the next best tool is plant-based by default. Like a lot of groups have goals like, oh, let's get plant-based food up to 30% by 2030. That's not a good idea. It's better to have this tool because you get immediate results. Why wait until 2030? You don't know what's going to happen by 2030. It might be a different government in power or a different administration. Why don't you use a tool where you get immediate results? Next slide, please. So this is a fully plant-based plate. This is from health professionals in the UK. So plant-based health professionals in the UK. How many servings of fruits and vegetables should you have every day? What does the World Health Organization say? How many?
12.
I wish.
I mean, it should be 12.
Should be 12, yeah. Okay, but it is 5, yeah.
5 to 10, I think.
Yeah, it's 5 for the World Health Organization.
That's
But plant-based health professionals say 10 is the ideal. You should at least have 10 servings of fruits and vegetables. So how many of you have that, would you say? Do a lot of you have that? No?
What does that servings actually look like?
I'm trying to think how many grams is it. Peter, do you know? Is it like, it's like a cup or like, I
I
don't know,
think it
something
depends
like
on
that.
the,
Yeah.
depends on the fruit and vegetable, I think. Some of them are expressed as gram. I think a lot
Yeah,
of
you
them
can
are
just
expressed as
maybe
grams.
Google it. Like,
So mixed salad would be like 10 servings if you put all those vegetables in a mixed salad?
Be
and
a
have
really
bowl?
big salad.
Because I don't consume that much food in a day. 11 serving 10 servings seems like a lot to me.
Yeah. So, okay, so,
Do you eat as fruits and vegetables and not like
yeah, just fruits and
legumes?
vegetables. No, just fruits and vegetables, 5 to 10 servings a day. Yeah. And this some other things to look out for. Iodine, they suggest, unless you have salt. Iodinized salt. It's important to have iodine. So hopefully you get your iodine. Your vitamin B12. So it's called. So in the UK, they have a guidelines called Eat Well guidelines, and they weren't fully plant-based. So UK's plant-based health professionals veganized the whole menu, and so this is what it would look like. Next slide, please. Okay. So one of our proposals, proposal 23 of the treaty, is no clearing forests or other ecosystems for animal farming. So, and one of the cities that endorsed, Alcorcón in Spain, actually in their endorsements that stop changes in land use, including deforestation, for livestock farming. So so good to see a city recognize farming. There was also a Dutch city that endorsed the treaty, Nijmegen, yeah. And they also refer to not having land use changes for expanded animal agriculture. So it's so nice to see cities take that responsibility, because obviously farming is outside the city, but they're looking at their footprint outside the city. Next slide, please. So how many people have heard of community fridges or know of a community fridge? Okay. Where do you know of a community fridge?
Well, I work with in Beaches East York, so there's a couple there. I also live in Scarborough. I know there's not as many as there should be, because obviously Scarborough's ginormous. But I know of like 2 or 3 there.
And what is the fridge? Can you explain what it is?
Oh, I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. Essentially, it's a fridge and ideally like an easy to access space, so maybe like near like a library or a community center or something like that, and people out of the goodness of their own hearts can come and put food that people who are in need of it can then take from when they need it.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see more and more of these community fridges.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the final slides, and just like its call to action. So we would like more cities to endorse the treaty. The province, the country eventually. We want Canada to endorse. And these are some of the things that you can do. You can pass a motion with meaningful measures in it. We ask that they write a letter to the Canadian government when they endorse the treaty and ask them to negotiate a treaty. As I mentioned, at the next COP 30 in Brazil, we're hoping to get 1 or more country endorsements, including a country in Africa that we're working with. These are things cities can do. They can declare a climate emergency. They can promote plant-based food in their climate action plan. So a lot of cities have climate action plans, and they talk about buildings and transportation. They need to have a chapter on food, because food, as I mentioned, is a third of the greenhouse gas emissions. We really need to prioritize food. And food not only affects greenhouse gas emissions, but all those other planetary boundaries, and also social foundations. We need to shift city events to plant-based. So like even events like if your MPP is organizing community events, or your party is organizing events, see if they can make it plant-based or at least greener by default. If they can make it all plant-based, that would be the best. And then we can shift menus in institutions like schools, universities, hospitals, retirement homes, prisons, and then we can invest in community gardens, fruit orchards in the city, things like that, gardens in schools. So if you have gardens in schools, children are more likely to eat vegetables if they're part of the process. So it's very important as part of the education system. You can endorse the treaty by pointing your phone there, or I know we also circulated a board, but if you point your phone there, it goes to our homepage, and you can endorse as an individual, group, business, and city. Next slide, please. This is the final slide. So these are just some resources we have. So we have like a sample motion that you can share with your city. So if you'd like to join a team, we have like welcoming calls every Friday. And if you go to our website, under Take Action, it says like, join a welcoming call. So you can just sign up and then you'll get a Zoom link. We also have meetings here every Thursday, 5 to 8, in the other room, just across the hall. And we have like a plant-based potluck and then an organizing meeting. And we go to different cities. So Adrian is like a lead organizer for our all-day events. And our next all-day event will be in Hamilton. And do you know the date of that?
It's Tuesday, October, is that 21st, I believe? Or is it 22nd? It's the 21st, right?
So yeah, Tuesday, October 21st, we're going to be going to Hamilton, and Jacinta we're writing letters to all the councilors to see if we can meet with them. We're going to table outside in front of City Hall. Some of us are going to go inside. Others are gonna go and try to get window clings on restaurants and ask for menu changes to restaurants. So we do this every month in different locations. We go to Burlington. Last month it was in Mississauga, just before they endorsed the treaty. It was pretty nice. Yeah, so check out our accounts on social media. Like we have Plant-Based Treaty Toronto, we have Plant-Based Treaty Hamilton, like all these, we have all these different Instagram accounts. This is the Safe and Just report, and so we did a donut economics. As I mentioned earlier, it's about the planetary boundaries and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we applied it to the food system. And we did this 2 years ago for COP 28, and now we're updating it for COP 30. And we're gonna focus on food security and also city and country endorsements from a regional perspective. So we're gonna look at Asia, all the different regions, and see exciting examples of what different cities and countries are doing around the world. Does anybody know which country is like sort of a leader right now? Which country is a leader in terms of plant-based national action plans? Does anybody know? Yeah, Peter.
Well, Denmark has a plan, so I think it's quite comprehensive, isn't it?
Yes. So Denmark was the first country in the world to come up with a national plant-based action plan, and they have a conference called Plant-Based Foods Conference, October 2021, this month. And the purpose of this conference is to get other countries in the European Union to also have a national plant-based action plan. So we're currently working with some African countries like Ghana, and we've arranged for them to go to the conference because bilateral aid right now, like from Canada, the UK, all these different countries, it just promotes conventional agriculture, like increased meat consumption. So we want to see a change in bilateral aid so that it promotes agroforestry and plant-based food systems. And so we're going to invite, so Ghana's actually, they've agreed to go. We actually have 2 plant-based treaty campaigners in Ghana right now, Enrique and Cindy. And they've been meeting with the Minister of State for Climate. And the President is on board, the President's office, but they're trying to get support from different layers, like from the parliamentarians, from NGOs, so they've got a lot of nonprofits, business, parliamentarians, technical experts. So they're getting all that layered support before COP 30, so that we get a meaningful endorsement by the time we go to COP. And we're looking at a few other countries, like Bhutan is a very small country, less than 1 million, but they have the gross happiness index. I don't know if you heard that. We're trying for some small island states like St. Kitts and Nevis, so we're going to do a workshop with them on plant-based treaty. So we already met with their staff. So we go to the UN high political meetings, or whatever they're called, high level political meetings, and we make a lot of contacts there. And when we go to COP, it's so easy, like to meet ministers, and like I can't tell you how easy it is. Like everywhere you turn, like usually we're meeting like very high officials. But we learned that it's important not just to go to climate conferences, because the decisions are made at food conferences. So I went to New York Climate Week, and there was a food day, going to the UN to the food conferences, working with the World Food Program, UNESCO, World Bank, not so much now because with Trump, he said that World Bank cannot focus on climate, just like on economics. But there are many other multilateral development banks. So the point is, it's important to go where the decisions are made. So going to the food conferences, not just the climate conferences, because they're easy to persuade. Like, oh yes, there's a climate crisis and food's a problem. But who makes the day-to-day decisions? There's billions of dollars in decisions. So we have to influence World Food Program, UNESCO, all those others. So that was sort of something that we just learned that we need to do. And then we have playbooks, and so please join our campaign. You have lots of different skills. When we did the go-around, it's clear that you have so many skills. And if you could help us in any way, we'd appreciate it. We're always looking for champions. Like currently we're working with Richard Nicholson. He's a former councillor in the UK. He was the one who got us the first endorsement in the UK in Haywards Heath. And he's doing playbooks for cities. So he's looking at what cities can do to change the food system. So he's done 5 playbooks already. One for parishes, like very small parishes, for towns, for cities, for counties and districts. Jenny and Peter from the UK, you probably know what that all means, the different levels. And then now he's also going to do a country playbook, so 6 levels. We're also going to rank towns, how they're doing, and then we're going to do it for different countries. And then we're going to try to do a world ranking of like how are different cities and towns and countries doing on plant-based, because from this presentation, it's clear, there's two paths, climate catastrophe, more than 2 degrees Celsius warming, not dealing with the food system, increasing meat and dairy consumption, and just like destroying the climate, freshwater use, eutrophication and ocean acidification. It's a world that a lot of people here are very young. It's a world that you're gonna be living in that's gonna be very dark. And so there's that choice, like just business as usual, or we change the food system. And we make it fun, we make it nutritious, healthy, and we can deal with world hunger, and then all the planetary boundaries. So we have this choice. And it's just with this presentation and our Safe and Just report, it's just how do we get the message out? Because I think a lot of people don't know how serious, without addressing food, we are gonna cross the 2 degrees threshold. So that's what scientists have said. We're gonna cross 2 degrees Celsius warming if we don't address food. So that's what this presentation is about. We need your help. We'd love to do trainings and get you to do presentations. We have a lot of these slides. If you ever want to do a presentation for your own, network, we'd love that. That's what we need to do. How do we get the word out fast? Because we don't have a lot of time. Remember what the Harvard study said? 2030, we've got a peak, and then go down 60% by 2036. How's that going to happen? Most people don't have a clue, right? So I think we've got to mobilize. So I need your help. So please join the Plant-Based Treaty, join other groups, a lot of amazing other groups that work on these issues, and let's transform the food system.
We want to open it up to questions?
Sure, if anybody, I sort of had questions along the way, but if anybody has additional questions for Anna.
I have a question on cost. Is there any statistics on plant-based diets being cheaper or maybe more expensive than meat diets? Because I think the cost of living crisis is at top of mind for a lot of people too. And if this can be presented as a cheaper alternative, I think it's even more helpful.
Right. Does anybody have a good answer for that? Cost? I know the New York City hospital case, there were cost savings because they went very whole foods. I think if you go for processed, it could be because the scale, the economy scales aren't there yet, so it's not competitive, but not yet. But I think down the road with precision fermentation, that's the idea. Is how do you lower the costs, right? Just like what happened with solar panels, right?
Yeah.
Now they're so competitive. Solar panels is the way to go. So the question is, when will we get the alt proteins at that level? Because they're not at that level yet. But when it comes to whole foods, it is it's generally cheaper, right? Does anybody else have a good answer to that? Because that's a key question, and I think we should do more of those kind of presentations. We're focusing on cost, because you're absolutely right. If we want to sell it to hospitals, to politicians, then we got to do that. Does anybody have a good answer for that, or know of any? But you're absolutely right.
Your answer was perfect. If you buy vegan processed foods from the supermarket, you're paying a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
But if you buy a can of chickpeas, some spaghetti, and some vegetables, it's cheaper than purchasing animal flesh.
Yeah, lentils, a bag of lentils, very cheap, right? And it's just about knowing how to make it well. Varun has a recipe for dal. It's super cheap if you do it that way. But it's true that some fruits and vegetables are expensive, and it's not fair because the subsidies, right? So we have to tackle the issue of subsidies. We should be subsidizing fruits and vegetables from this presentation. That's the message. We should be subsidizing that because that's going to heal the planet and your health. So right now we got they're called perverse subsidies because we're subsidizing meat, dairy, and eggs. Because the industry is so powerful, so we got to organize and create demand and also change policies. We got to get rid of those bad subsidies, those pernicious subsidies. But even given the current situation, if you buy a can of beans, or better yet, a bag of lentils, it's very cheap and nutritious. But you do need your fruits and vegetables. Yes.
When my sister was studying in Sweden, there was a program there where, I don't know if it was a website or something, where you could actually, they posted where an apple tree was on city property, and you could go and residents could go pick apples, or there was a pear tree, or wild grapes, or wild berries, or foraging for mushrooms. Does that kind of system exist here in the city?
Yeah, so there's an NGO that takes, what is it called, Second Harvest, does anybody know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if somebody could turn off the, or you don't want to turn it off the movie, so you want to keep it on, it's just okay, we'll keep it on. Oh yeah, so there is an NGO like that goes around, and is it called Second Harvest, or?
Well, there's two different organizations. The Second Harvest is more dealing with prepared food.
Right.
That, say it's at a conference and there's
Right.
leftover, and then redistributing that to shelters.
Yes.
I think what you're thinking of is Not Far from the Tree. Not Far from the Tree, which is a nonprofit that goes and, well, they even have agreements with homeowners. So let's say they've got fir trees or nut trees or something else, and they'll have volunteers pick the crop when it's ripe, and some of it goes to the homeowner, some goes for distribution to, I guess, people in need, I suppose, and some to the volunteers.
Right,
as well.
absolutely. But so there are some cities that do much better than we do, that have a lot of fruit orchards. There are some booklets that you can get on like cities and fruit orchards. So we should present it to the cities that we live in, that we'd be growing more edible foods, because of this crisis, like where fruits and vegetables sometimes aren't that affordable, and so we should make them. We should think of food security, when thinking about which trees we're planting, and have more community gardens and so forth. Yeah. So,
I have another question on culture and identity. I think when asked to go vegan, a lot of people would say, "Oh, I can't because I come from a culture where the cuisine is very meat heavy," and they just come from that background, right? What do you tell those folks to get them on this side?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how to address cultural issues? Yeah, very good question. I guess one of the things that we've been looking at, I know Varun, you've looked into this. If you go back 100 years or longer, a lot of meat, dairy, and eggs has been imposed on countries. So like colonialism has added, a lot of meat. And if you look at companies like Cargill, it's an American company. It's one of the top slaughterhouse and animal feed companies in the world. They have more billionaires in that family than any family in the U.S. Okay, so they're based in Minnesota, and they go to Indonesia. They go to India. They go to these countries, and 100 million people to do a backyard chicken. So villagers that are mainly plant-based, they come, here's some free actions, here's some free animal feed at the beginning. So they get them into that, then they have to start building a network of slaughterhouses. And they did this in Odisha. It's a state in eastern India that's mostly plant-based, and they go in there and they convert people that are plant-based to eating chickens and eggs and goats. And then you have a longer, take a historical context and try to understand. Yeah. But anybody else I know some of you might have an answer to that. I know, Benny, did you want to answer that?
I do street outreach a lot, and people tell me our culture too. I went vegan 30 years ago, privileged in Canada, we're privileged in the US.
Anjali. So I had a question. So when I was in university in the Netherlands, Mondays, every Monday the university would just provide meatless food. Do we have something like that in Canada, like universities or schools practice something like that? Because that would be something that's so easy to integrate. And to be honest, that was something that all students look forward to, especially vegans and vegetarians, because that day we would have a lot more options in the university. So yeah, this was in the Netherlands. I studied there.
Nice, very good. So I don't know, Adrian, if you have a good answer to that, but there is a coalition for healthy schools or something. There is, you were getting engaged in some of the schools